Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Sacred Travel Podcast. And my guest today is the Sacred Sound Priestess, Elsa Field. And we are going to be speaking about ancient sonic temples of the goddess and ancient musician priestesses. Dr. Elsa Field is a PhD scientist, priestess of Avalon, and sacred sound and devotional musician. Her joy and passion is to guide women to come home to be the divine channels that they naturally are. Drawing on an ancient priestess path of the temple singer and musician, Elsa's community is on a divinely guided mission to reawaken the lineage of the priestess sound healer, the priestess of sacred sound for the modern day. A lifelong musician, Elsa's journey began as a classically trained vocalist and recording artist. She has been developing the sacred practices of the devotional singer for the past 10 years with the healing lineage of Avalon. Weaving her story, sound healing, ceremony, and sound science, Elsa is the creatrix of transformational group and one-on-one programs that empower you to unlock your own devotional voice and service as a priestess of the sacred sound. Welcome, Elsa. I'm so delighted to have you here today.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you for that beautiful intro. It's always interesting hearing your own bio being read back to you because it's like a reminder to me of all that I stand for and all that I create. So thank you. That's so beautiful. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, and it's so true. Yeah, I love that you take this as an own reminder because you
Yeah.
are being usually like that mirror and that guide for others, but sometimes we also have to call ourselves back to
Mm,
our own center line.
absolutely. Yeah. I feel that's a big part of the path of the priestess, actually, is being in that everyday integrity and authenticity with who we truly are and how we're really called to serve. So it's a beautiful reminder to drop into that every day.
Yeah, I love that. And also as a fellow priestess, I really love what you just said about how we are being called to serve. And so my first question to you is actually, how did that path of the sound healing
Mm.
priestess find you?
Yeah, so she found me, but it was also a divine directive, I would say.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily want to say that I didn't have a choice because of course I did.
I
But
I
it was
know these choiceless
y-
choices.
you know what I mean. It's like when the goddess speaks to you so strongly on a soul level and she gives you that divine directive, it's very hard to ignore. And so she spoke to me through various incredible teachers that I met on my path in my mid 20s. I'm almost 30 now. And I had been on this path of the classical singer and weaving in my song medicine into my priestess work for a few years. And then I had some really clear guidance from a few of my priestess teachers. So Kathy Jones, the founder of the Glastonbury Goddess Temple, and Sally Pullinger, co-founder as well, and also my priestess teacher, Luna Silver. And they just kept saying to me, sound is your medicine, song is your medicine, Elsa. Really trust that. Really, really believe in that. And they gave me opportunities to share. So I'm so thankful to them. And whether it was in a community ceremony that we were offering as part of the Goddess Temple community where I live here in Glastonbury, or part of the Goddess Conference that happens every year, or there were all of these different mini opportunities that added up, kind of like divine nudges and whispers
Yeah.
that gave me the faith in the medicine that I was bringing forward.
Yeah.
Because it's really hard, right, to follow a new path, a new spiritual path, and trust in that in a vacuum on our own. it is
Hmm.
actually really supportive to have a community around us. So that was a really big part of my path of fully stepping onto this and claiming it as my life's walk and my medicine that I'm here to share. And then when I visited Egypt, it kind of anchored in so many of these messages and codes for me.
Hmm.
And many people experience this when they visit those lands, right? Because many of us have had many lifetimes in the temples of Egypt. And it's an incredible opportunity to stand at that gateway of our soul's remembrance and reclaim gifts from other lifetimes that we may have also walked and also heal wounds. You know,
Hmm.
there was a lot that came up for me in my journey in Egypt, and maybe we'll share about it in this talk today, that I had to heal on my path of reclaiming those gifts of sound and voice and being in my power around that. And so I can't thank the Egyptian goddesses and gods and deities enough as well for really showing me, especially Hathor, the goddess of music and sound, really came in so strongly and really showed me that this was my path in this lifetime to not only walk the path of the priestess sound healer, but also support others to remember their sacred voice and their sound medicine. So that has been my journey.
Wow, I love it. And of course, we cannot speak about sound without mentioning Hathor. So thank you for
Yeah.
bringing her in right at the beginning.
Yes.
So you've already mentioned Egypt. I know that you've done quite some research, but also like, yeah, extensive travel to explore the ancient lineage of the Sound Priestess. And so, can you speak a little bit to where else it has led you?
Yeah. Do you mean other places
Like
or
physical, yes, temples, places, ancient cultures,
in
civilizations.
Egypt, in Egypt specifically, or somewhere else?
So I know that so there's Egypt, but I know that there
Yeah.
is more, right? So you meant
Yeah.
to Malta as well. So it's
Yeah.
not only about Egypt.
Yes. So I I love to speak about this. So essentially, the lineage that I'm uncovering alongside many other colleagues is this lineage that birthed in Africa at the dawn of humanity, essentially, and how we have worked with sound as a healing tool since that time. That's my belief. And it's what is being revealed to me through looking at the archaeology of these ancient sites that many of them were built with an acoustic understanding of how to actually create a resonance structure that amplifies the human voice. So the temples on Malta are a great example of this. And not only that, but we only have to look at natural cave formations,
Hmm.
right? And how these have been spaces where humans have, of course, dwelt and created communities, but also used them as places of ceremony and ritual. And how these natural spaces often have these incredible sonic acoustics as well. And so my hypothesis, if you will, is that this lineage of the ancient sound priestess is probably the oldest priestess lineage we can really think of.
Mm.
And not only that, but looking in my study of these ancient Mediterranean cultures,
Hmm.
we can see her across so many different cultures. So there are many, many different figurines, drawings, inscriptions, even from ancient Egypt, songs and hymns,
Hmm.
from
Yeah.
ancient Mesopotamia, songs and hymns that come forward that show that women played this key role in holding this ancient sound temple space. And I love to use Egypt as a case study because in Egypt we have a lot of documentation right from the Old Kingdom all the way up to the Greco-Roman period in Egypt of these musician priestesses. And they had that title. That's who they were within the temple. They had a distinctive role. And their role evolved over the millennia of ancient Egypt, but they were always there. And so it's a beautiful case study because they had that defined role. But throughout Mediterranean cultures, we can see the influence of that lineage of the Hathor priestesses, because that religious and spiritual structure spread throughout the Greek and Roman world through the influence of goddess Isis. She was a really powerful goddess that many people resonated with in that world. And even through to early Christian times, you know, there were still Isis temples that were active. And within those cultures, the frame drum, the tambourine were really commonly used instruments in those temples. We can see that through all of the beautiful inscriptions that we find there, and beautiful figurines that are found as well. So it's like this lineage of the sound priestess that has been birthed in the heart place of humanity and has gradually traveled throughout the Mediterranean world. And of course, you know, I'm just talking about that region of the world, but there are so many other cultures where women hold that role, right? But I just love to really focus on this lineage throughout Egypt and beyond because it's so distinctive. And also, you know, it's my personal heritage, right? Like I am of Mediterranean heritage. So it's really, fascinating for me on a personal level to feel that kind of like ancestral link that most of us in the West will have to these cultures and these countries. So yeah, that's a little about where it's taken me.
Wow, I love it. And you know, I just remember like from my own time in Egypt, like the first time I went to the Serapeum, and I'm sure that you've been there, which is this ancient temple of healing with frequency
Yeah.
and sound. And so just the pure idea of that sound and frequency is actually something that activates, motivates all of our molecular structure into self-healing, and that was like used as common medical tools, so to say, and that we are given as humans this own voice to tone and to sing with. That was for me a whole like new perspective.
Wow, I love that. I love that you had that experience there. Yeah, it's incredibly powerful to see that, right, with our physical eye and feel the frequency of those structures. And you know, the cathedrals and churches that we have now are the modern day sound temples,
Yeah.
right? Like it's always been such a core piece is that we have these spaces that are acoustically really beautifully resonant in a certain way that it amplifies the sacred energies of whatever ceremony or invocation is being held there. It's so important. I mean, I even find this now, like the room that I'm in now, recording this interview with you, I have sound treated it, but it's still kind of boxy. Like the sound is not really incredible. Whereas, you know, there are spaces that we can build today. This is one of my long-term goals, is to build, you know, a beautiful space like a octagonal space or a hexagonal space with irregular edges, because it gives the sound so many more places to literally bounce off of. And these are the kinds of spaces that I love to have sound baths in, you know, if I'm providing that
Yeah.
for a group. It's so important to think about the sound space when we do ceremonies. And it's also why, you know, when pilgrims go to these special places, like in Egypt, it's amazing to do group ceremony in those ancient temples even if they're ruins, or they're not fully complete, you can still feel that resonant architecture and how it's creating a sacred container for us to connect with the resonant chamber of our own bodies, as you said, the voice as that sound temple within us.
How do you feel was that used in the ancient times, or what was it used for? I mean, we touched a little bit on the healing, but I'm sure that in your own studies and research, you found quite a lot that why this lineage was also so present.
Yeah, that's a great question. And a lot of the sacred sites that I've been looking at, or the archaeology from those sites, it's archaeology, right? So it's prehistoric, which means that there's no written record of what was done. So, a lot of it is not conjecture, but like we have to feel into what the possibilities could have been. And so this is where like my kind of like scientifically trained brain has to take a break and go back into the priestess side, which is our intuitive remembrance, right? So you mentioned Saqqara, the Serapeum at Saqqara, where they have these boxes that are like resonant chambers, right? And if you tone into this chamber, it's amplified throughout the entire structure. And then they have kind of like ancient massage tables in front of each of these boxes where patients would lie and receive this sacred resonance. So there are examples of specific use of sound as a healing tool, like that one. But we also know that sound was used to create that sacred space for deep ceremony. So a great example is in Malta at one of the underground temples that they've uncovered. It's actually my belief that they found more of them, but they just have not publicly shared that because they know people would
That's
flock there.
very probable.
So it's the Hypogeum in Malta, which has this incredible, unique resonance that amplifies the male voice when it's toning a low C.
Okay, wow.
And they have this particular stone there called the Oracle Stone. It's like a niche that you can tone into. My partner Jerome did this while we were in there. It was really beautiful. And it resonates throughout the structure. And then in that structure,
wow.
they have kind of like different spaces where, archaeologists think they were used for different uses, but they found many, many examples. I actually have a little statue over there. Should have brought it over here. But anyway, they found all of these figurines of sleeping goddesses. You might have seen them. And if anyone's listening, just Google, she's called the Sleeping Lady of Malta. And so they believe, and I feel, that truth to be that these were oracle temples. They were dreaming temples where people would go for deep
I can
rest,
see that.
to receive the visions and to awaken their own oracular knowing, but also that whoever was conducting and holding the ceremony would act as that divine oracle for the community of whatever was being asked. And that lineage of the oracle, there's many cultures where we find that. A really, of course, prominent and famous one is ancient Greece, the oracle priestesses. They were also really present in Egypt. There's the famous story of Alexander going to Alexandria to visit the oracle and receive wisdom from her. So that's another way in which sound was really used, was through the connection to other dimensions. Kind of like how many priestesses and channels work today, right? Is using their voice as a divine instrument to bring through messages of healing or encouragement or specific answers to questions that were being sought. So in Egypt, in the Temple of Hathor, for example, there is a beautiful dream temple there that they've uncovered. Perhaps you visited there when you went. And this was another beautiful sound temple where priestesses would work in that oracular way. It was a really cool part of the healing modalities they used in Egypt, was dream and deep rest and sleep. So that's another beautiful example of how sound was used. And I do think as well, a lot of it was purely how we use sound today, for celebration, for upliftment, for bringing the community together. And there's even mentions of the sound priestess in the Bible. I forget the exact passage, but it's in the Old Testament when Miriam leads the women. I think it's when Moses is parting the Red Sea. Biblical experts can correct me. But anyway, she leads the women across the desert, and in this procession of women playing the tambourine and praising God. So that lineage of the tambourine priestess made its way all the way through to biblical times. And in the modern day, there are some incredible women in the lineage of Lane Redmond who really uncovered a lot of these mysteries around the frame drum. These women are bringing this processional tambourine as a ceremonial tool, women coming together in procession, playing these instruments. They're bringing that back into the modern day, which is so incredible to see videos of that and to experience that if you ever get to in a ceremony.
I'm just getting chills all over my body. I can really feel the vibration from every word that you're saying, like as the truth frequency of,
Yeah.
yeah, so soaking in. And while you were speaking, it also came to me that I think we just have in many ways forgotten that also just the mere fact that we are able to speak and that every word that we speak is a spell, and that we are speaking our dreams and our desires into creation. And so that's why also there is, especially for the women, that connection with the womb and the throat, right? And also that, yeah, just mindfulness of using voice as a sacred tool and be mindful
Mm.
of what and how we speak.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And I feel that as I journeyed deeper with my voice, I really gained that understanding even more, to the point where, yeah, some connections and relationships in my life where I was maybe perpetuating that kind of like mentality of things are happening to me rather than I am an active part of my manifestation and creation. I definitely felt my relationships shift, and new connections were formed, or existing connections just shifted and deepened in the language that we spoke to each other in our friendships and connections. And even as a business owner, in the way that I relate to my team and the people that support me, it's so important. It's like really taking that time to think and reflect before we share, before we say, really feeling how that voice as a sacred instrument to create our reality comes into every aspect of our lives. I think this is a really core piece of the sound priestess path that you just hit upon. Definitely.
Ancient technology for the modern day priestess.
Yes, it so is. It's like the next time we speak about a limiting belief, just noticing that,
Yeah.
whether
Yeah.
it's, I'm trying to think of an example for myself, like, oh, I can't do graphic design. Like, I can't do it. Just noticing how we can subtly shift that to, I understand that graphic design isn't my zone of genius, but I'm willing to learn. Or I'm willing to receive support from others in that area of my life. just that kind of like subtle
So
tweak.
powerful.
It's so powerful, right? It opens so many possibilities for us.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you don't mind going a little bit more in detail into your own story, because I know that you
Yeah.
also have quite, yeah, healed a lot of, let's say, dis-eases, like also
Yeah.
physical things that manifested around your throat chakra. And I'm curious to know how, of course, the entire path, but maybe also some specific
Mm.
experiences that you had in one or the other temple has helped you to heal that.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Okay. There's so much here. So the first piece really connects with what we just shared about the power of using our voice to create our new reality. Because I received a lot of support from my teacher and also from my partner, Jerome, as well. He really helped me to see that, using my voice to call in affirmations daily for healing was really powerful because he is very much a sound priest as well. And so that was really powerful for me, was just the daily practice of affirming that I was healing. And so I experienced, I basically had this very complex intermingling of different chronic diseases, but the core piece was lack of nourishment, undernourishment, which I think a lot of women experience, especially those of us that are cycling actively, that have a menstrual cycle. There can be a real tipping the balance where we feel really drained, right? Whether that is through having really heavy periods or through childbirth, or I mean, there's so many experiences that can lead to that lack of nourishment. But also for me, it was just a kind of systemic prioritizing of mental activity and performance in the world over caring for my physical body as a temple. And so, through this process of stepping fully onto my priestess path and really awakening my voice as this sacred tool, my body then showed me all of the places, like they were given space to rise to the surface and actually be shown. And so I actually think it was happening really gradually, but essentially it was an underactive thyroid and an autoimmune issue of the thyroid. So my immune system was attacking my own cells. And this happened very gradually, but it essentially meant that my thyroid gland was inflamed and I could literally feel it in my throat. It was like my throat chakra, and I can even kind of like invoke the symptoms now as I'm speaking about it. It's like I can feel that there's something there that was definitely out of place. And so I had to really look at that. It was like, well, I'm teaching and supporting women around their voice. Like, why is this happening to me? you know, I
Yeah.
thought I'd done so much work on this area.
Yes.
And so that was really tough medicine to receive, that there was still more that I personally had to heal. And I had to get so intentional about where I used my energy to pour it back into myself. And that daily sound affirmation practice, visualizing my thyroid is completely healed and saying to myself, my thyroid is completely healed. My thyroid is fully healthy. That was so powerful for me. So, over a 2 year period, I was able to restore my thyroid function. And it's an
Wow.
ongoing process. It's an ongoing process of maintaining that health, right? Because I think those of us that have that tendency to have a low thyroid, it might be genetic as well. It's ancestral for me, for sure. So it's like my whole life now, I know that I have to really prioritize the throat chakra. And it's interesting, in my human design, this is the only center that is undefined in my chart.
Yes.
So it's like clearly an area where I'm doing a lot of healing. And so going back to your question about the temples, there was a really powerful experience that I had in one of the temples. I don't think I've ever shared about this actually, like anywhere else.
Yay! That's a
Yeah,
first timer.
it's a first timer. So this was really in the middle of my thyroid healing journey. Thyroid is also deeply connected to the womb. There's a lot of feedbacks between the two centers. So I was also really journeying with my personal power, my creativity, my womb space. And so when I visited one of the temples, I had this really strong experience that I'd been there before. When I was there, it was like I could see in Technicolor. I don't know if you've ever had this experience, Julia, but it was like I could see where everything was. I could see where, the spaces where patients had been treated for different diseases had been. I could see where the ceremonies and rituals were. I could see where all of the different medicines had been stored. Like it was really amazing experience, actually.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I haven't had that anywhere else. It was very strong past life remembering. And this was a lifetime I remembered where I had been a man and where essentially there had been a misalignment, like a misuse of power in that temple, because that happened a lot in ancient Egypt, for sure. There was a lot of beauty, also a lot of distortion that I think many of us now on the priestess path are healing, right? We're learning how to hold the power within us as a healthy power rather than it being power over anyone else. And so when I went on my second pilgrimage to Egypt, the main reason I went was to go back there to actually do a dedicated healing ceremony to essentially forgive myself for anything that had happened and to also reclaim my power. And I later had this really powerful experience in a healing group where two incredible elder sisters were supporting me, where I literally felt that soul retrieval happen in my voice. And it was like my voice suddenly dropped by several octaves and I was toning with this really low
Oh,
male
wow.
voice. And it came back fully into my body, that feeling of my power,
I'm
anywhere I'd given my
shivering.
power away, coming back
Wow,
in.
that's powerful.
So these temples, they can be powerful portals for our remembrance. And like I think I shared before, a remembrance of our soul's gifts. It's like healing anything that we're ready to release from our soul's kind of like, not memory, but like the imprint that's affecting us in this life. But then also reclaiming fully any gifts that we really had in those lifetimes that we can bring in now to support us in our walk now as
Mm-hmm.
priestesses.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And, it's just always so amazing to me how physical this spiritual experience when we go to these places, like how physically they are felt and have that effect on our bodies. That is just, yeah, it
Mm.
always amazes me.
Yeah, it is really amazing, isn't it? And you just can't predict when it will happen as well.
Nope, not linear.
Yeah, it can happen in the most unexpected ways. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, did you go to inside the Great Pyramid? You probably did, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. How did you feel when you went inside the Great Pyramid?
Um, so I went twice,
Mm.
and the at one time we also had this very, very powerful toning experience
Mm.
where during a private visit we just started, and it wasn't really planned. It felt like, divinely orchestrated and guided, so
Mm.
that all of a sudden everybody was just toning, and started to amplify into this just beautiful hymn.
Wow.
And it's really a resonance that you can feel with your entire system, like in every cell.
Mm. Wow, amazing. What an incredible experience. Yeah. Well, I wanted to ask you just what your experience was because it's such a powerful amplification chamber,
It
isn't
is.
it? The Great Pyramid. And so, going back to that idea that you just can't predict how you'll feel, like I was so excited to go in the Great Pyramid both times that I've been in there as well. Both times, I felt so physically sick. I had to leave like
Oh
straight away.
yeah.
Like I just could not stay in there. I mean, it was
Hmm.
the one of the more memorable experiences of the trip, feeling that I was physically going to be sick
Mm.
in the Great Pyramid. And it's quite an ordeal to get there. It's not easy to get in and out of the pyramid. So
Yes.
I had to like find my way out as quickly as I
Depending where you
could.
are, yeah.
it was
Yeah.
it was intense, but and on the other hand, Jerome, when he goes in there, he's like, wow, this space is incredible. He's had some incredible experiences of toning in there, like you shared, to open that connection to the celestial gateways. And that's what it is. It's an amplification chamber for the light body, right? It supports us to connect to that stargate that the pyramids are aligned to. And yet, for me, everything that I was personally purging in that trip got amplified being in that space
Of course.
because of the shape, right? It amplifies the energy and the way it's structured, made out of that granite stone. It is incredibly high frequency, the crystalline structure and the way it was built. So it's just interesting how you can never predict. Like that is a sound temple that I have yet to really fully experience because it was just so overwhelming for me on a cellular level.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, given that it is the throat chakra of the entire planet, so that
Yeah.
is just another layer.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
Yeah, but I
absolutely.
can feel the purging completely, and it's
Mm,
these structures that also really let us tune in with our bodies, like where there is the subtle shifts that still need
mm,
to happen.
yeah. Yeah, so true. Yeah, so one day I hope to go back and have a
Oh,
less
you
intense
will.
experience.
You will for sure. And so honestly, my personal favorite is kind of like so behind me for the ones that are watching, it's her. So with her, I had oh
Mm.
that had the I had from the very first time a very, very strong connection. And last time
Mm.
when I went with Sarah and I, Soleil, we had the incredible opportunity to go into the second
Wow.
pyramid,
Wow.
and she's the
Yeah.
womb. She's the womb. So, and you will, I really you will, I know that you will have an opportunity to experience both, and that the resonance also that we just talked about the throat and the womb and how there is
Mm.
that connection and how they are
Wow.
um yeah, just the sacred dance also in a way. It's beautiful.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing. What an incredible experience. Yeah, I have heard that this second pyramid is my friend, my dear sister Melissa from Magdalene Rose Temple. She said to me, this is the Hathor pyramid. Like this one is definitely aligned with Hathor and the Divine Mother.
She's
So,
the cosmic mother.
wow,
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. So kind of like going fast forward into the modern day world, how do you feel that all of this, lineage, also this ancient technology that is coming more and more also to the forefront and wants to be discovered, how does that inform and empower our modern day lineage of priestesses to step into this embodiment?
Yeah, I think it's it's so important. I really believe that the voice and sound is a core priestess tool that, yes, I really feel that it's for everyone. This is not about being a professional musician. It's about feeling anchored and supported and empowered in your voice, that you trust in the wisdom that flows through to those who you're supporting in that moment. So much of the priestess path is about being in service and devotion to others and their journey of connecting with the divine spark within them. And so, how can we do that if this center is not fully open to receive the wisdom that's coming through from our soul in communion with the divine consciousness that wants to be shared? So a lot of my work is simply that, is simply about acknowledging the sacredness of your own voice and providing women with the sacred space to explore their voice, because so many of us, as I share, like my own throat chakra is doing something, so many of us have places where we have not felt fully free in sharing our voice, whether that's through our childhood experience or being told that we can't sing or that we're not good
Yes,
enough.
that's a big one.
It's really big. I mean, honestly, it's quite harrowing actually, like the number of women that share that common experience that they've had. And so it's really inspiring to feel that ancient lineage of women empowered in their voices that we can connect into. It's supportive. It's like we can visualize and feel them standing behind us, supporting us to reclaim the wisdom of our voices. And just like in those ancient temples, the goddess Hathor was the overarching deity supporting them. I really feel she's coming back in now again to support us, to empower our divine feminine voices. And it's interesting, isn't it, how that Hathor consciousness of all oneness, of being one with the cosmic mother, the cosmic womb, it's like that consciousness is really coming alive in our priestess collective.
It is. Yes.
Yeah,
Agree.
you feel it too, right? It's a big piece. And yeah, it feels that way in recent years, that her medicine and wisdom is being received and remembered by so many of us. And these other beautiful guides that we work with, like Mary Magdalene or Isis, it's like they're all gateways to that universal wisdom, that Hathor consciousness that's coming through. That's how I feel and relate to it anyway. And so this ancient wisdom is really being remembered now, just through that process of empowering our voices. And that's why I don't just call the work that I do like vocal empowerment work, because it's so much more than that. It's a sacred awakening to something deep within us.
Yeah.
And so there's that piece, just empowering our speaking voice is so incredible on the priestess path. And of course, there are other ways in which sound, I really feel, is being remembered by our priestess collective as a powerful tool to anchor and create sacred space, to recreate those sacred sound temple spaces, because sound is such a powerful tool to support us to go deep very quickly, right? Like we feel it if we go into a room and a beautiful piece of music is being played. The instant effect that has on our nervous system is so profound.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be a really complex thing of like, playing a million different instruments or anything like this. And this is the sound priestess path, really, is like discovering what your unique way that you want to share those gifts of sound is, to create that sacred space for transformation and healing on every level.
I love that. And so having said that, you also have a beautiful program coming up where you exactly do that, empower the women to use their sacred tools. So, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Of course, yeah, I would love to. So, this training that we're bringing forward is the Priestess of Sacred Sound. It's a practitioner training, which means that it is a certification, like it's a sound healing certification, but it's also a mystical journey of priestess remembrance. So it is the training that I would have loved to have been available for me, which is why I had to create it. And the kind of full download for it really came to me when I was in the Temple of Hathor in Egypt at Dendera.
Ah, that is the best. Like
Yes,
the receiving or conceiving these things
yes,
on sacred
yes.
land journeys. I love it.
Yeah, it's important to kind of bring that in as a foundational piece of this
Yes.
training. And it was amazing to me that I was in this sacred birthing chamber at Dendera when this download came in. And this is the chamber where the women are depicted on the temple walls playing the frame drum on one side and playing the sistrum on the other side as they beat the heartbeat of the newborn babies into life. Essentially, that's what that chamber was used for.
Wow.
And I knew that from reading Lane Redmond's incredible book, When the Drummers Were Women, which I really highly recommend to anyone who is interested in this path. And I was asking in that chamber, it was like, well, how does this want to come through my channel? Like, how am I being called to serve? You know, what is the core piece? Am I worthy? That was a big one for me as well.
Yeah.
Am I worthy? Have I received enough? Have I learned enough? All of these questions that we might encounter, right, as we feel into our sacred offerings in the world. And the answer from Hathor was just like so strong, such a strong, loving support for this training. And the way that I see it is that I'm a facilitator of this remembrance for others, and what we're creating together is a collective remembrance and soul empowerment. I've had many visions of the Priestess of Sacred Sound collective gathering on the land, visiting these sound temples together to reawaken the divine feminine voice. And it's happening, you know, each year of the training so far, we're in the third year now, we've gathered in person on the land here in
Oh, it's
Glastonbury
beautiful.
to create sacred sound temples and group healing experiences for our collective. And we also create in the virtual realm together every year at the end of the training an annual sacred sound concert where the students have the opportunity to share their gifts with the world. So it's really important to me as a teacher that it is about that facilitation of others to step into their soul gifts. And so the training is just such a beautiful journey through the ancient sound temples and the priestess lineage to modern day practical tools that you can weave into your own ceremonial space and existing modalities. And the core piece is empowering your unique sacred sound wisdom and the ways that you're called to share that through whatever sacred offerings you create. So it is the training for those who are called to work more deeply with Hathor and her creative muse in their daily life. So I'm so excited to begin this year. We begin at the start of June for this year's practitioner training.
Amazing. Thank you so much for doing this super important work. As yeah, you said, we are remembering and reweaving that collective consciousness of sacred sound and sacred voice activation back into the tapestry of creation with and power with, not over. I love it.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity to share about it on this beautiful
Yes,
podcast.
we are definitely going to put the link to the training in the show notes. So everybody who is very intrigued by now, go look it up. And yeah, that leaves me kind of with the final question. I feel that there is so much and we have so
Mm,
little time to cover.
yeah.
But is there anything else from your experience or anything that is really burning that you would still like to share with the audience?
Hmm. I think just coming back to the theme of your podcast, sacred travel, this is a real philosophy that I live my life by. And I guess I just want to share a message of encouragement to the listeners that listen to those soul nudges of where you desire to go to, and listen to your body and what you're being guided to, and trust the divine timing. It's like many of us are called to go to Egypt, but we also have to wait for that divine nudge that's really like, okay, now is the time to go. For me, it didn't come for several years, even after I, was journeying with the Egyptian deities and the themes. There was a moment where it became clear, like, okay, I'm definitely going, right? And so we have to just listen to those soul nudges. There's no pressure to go anywhere just because many others in the spiritual community are called to go there. Your soul will show you the places where you're being called to go to receive those moments of remembrance, and those moments of deep connection to what has gone before that will ignite your sacred journey. So that's something that I always do. It's like, if I'm inspired by a place that I hear about or I read about, it's like, do I need to go there in the physical? Is there a gift for me in the physical? Can I just connect in the etheric?
Yeah.
And sometimes the nudge is so strong, it's like, no, you need to go there in the physical. So, like for myself, it's the sacred sites in Turkey. I haven't been there
Oh,
yet.
yes.
That's on my list, going to Çatalhöyük and Göbekli Tepe. These are ancient sound temples that I am very excited to go to next.
100%. Yes.
So watch this space.
I love that. Yeah, thank you for sharing that reminder to everybody who's listening or watching. Thank you, Elsa. It's been, I always feel taken to these like places on so many levels, and it's been so powerful also to hear about your own healing journey. I feel that this is going to be very, very not just relatable, but also important for everybody to remember that, yeah, we are the masters of our own reality and we can
Mm,
heal ourselves.
yeah. Oh, I really hope that it's supportive for those who are listening. Thank you so much, Julia.
Thank you for coming. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And stay curious for next time.